Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear viewers, and welcome back to Women's View on Ahlulbayt TV. You're watching Women's View live on Ahlulbayt TV. Now, if you're watching before the break, you would know we're speaking about the significance of the Battle of Karbala in Islamic history. Before the break, we discussed the situation surrounding the time where Imam Hussein's martyrdom took place. What was the situation of the Ummah at that time? We also discussed the individual of Yazid and how he was as a person. We mentioned that he was not afraid of portraying his violations against Allah's sanctities and the sanctities of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We also explained many other aspects. We did receive an email before the break which we was just about to answer, and the email said what impact, she said that the sacrifice of Imam Hussein had a great impact in Islamic history, but wasn't there other events which also had the same impact or similar impact, or was Imam Hussein's impact the greatest? And that was from Sister Maryam from the UK. So inshallah now we'll be answering your question in more detail for all those watching at home. If you have any questions, comments which you would like to participate in today's show, then please do email us at womensview@ahlulbayt.tv. That's womensview@ahlulbayt.tv. All details should be on the screen. Alternatively, you can comment on our Twitter page or Facebook. Inshallah, we will endeavour to read them out during today's show and inshallah discuss them and analyse them in today's show. Now we'll be discussing what reform the sacrifice of Karbala had in Islamic history and many aspects, so stay tuned. And just to remind you that we may cut in and out of live feed from Karbala, so if you see any footage that is live feed from Karbala. I'm your host Zahra Al-Alawi, and today with me is Sister Noor. Sister Zahra, Noor Ali. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
You're answering Sister's email before the break, if you just like to carry on.
Yeah, I mean, when we look at Karbala, we do see that it was the most heinous type of crime that ever happened, because the situation came to as such where the people of the army of Yazid, even though they were claiming to be Muslims, we have to understand that if they truly were, they would never have ever taken up armfare with Imam Hussein. So the Battle of Karbala is one of those battles that, yes, it gives us the most grief because of the amount of things that happened within it. Now, what I was saying earlier, that although when battles had taken place before, certain other tragedies have happened, yes, they're very important within Islam. But we saw that in those times when battles were happening, it was happening between infidels and the Muslims. In the case of Karbala, they were claiming to be Muslims, and yet they were fighting against Imam Hussein, who is the grandson of the Holy Prophet. Did they not understand his status? So this is a great crime in itself. Not only that, we see that truth and truthhood go side by side, and they will never be at war with one another. Falsehood and falseness will never be at war with one another, because they're both of the same ideology. Truthhood and falseness always will be at war because they are against one another, and we have to understand that truthfulness will always prevail, and Imam Hussein was on the path of the truth. So obviously to this day we see that his name is above everything, because he was the one who saved Islam when it is in dire need, because Rasulullah wasn't there anymore. Revelation had stopped, but Islam still needed a reformation. And that is why we cry so much over Karbala, because we have, first of all, we still have not understood this mercy, but Allah has given a promise that I will keep the name of Imam Hussein alive. Like I mentioned previously before the break, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said that you are my loved ones, and I will keep your name alive so that people can come to know you. The name of Imam Hussein is not going to be obliterated, whereas we have no name of Yazid other than the name. We don't know where he is buried, thankfully, because there may be some people who may like to go and pay respects to him, and that's for them to deal with, and that's with them and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I don't wish to touch too much upon that. But yes, Karbala for us. And we also have to understand that Imam Hussein was not just for the Shia people. A lot of people claim that, oh, well, that happened and it's only a part of Shia history. No. Imam Hussein and his plight and the plight of everybody else alongside him was for the whole of humanity. He's the savior of humanity, and not just the savior of the Shia. I wish to make that point very clear, because a lot of people misconstrue this and they misunderstand. Now, the reasons of Karbala happening were a lot of underlying issues. Yazid had an axe to grind because his family were killed by Mullah Ali in the Battle of Badr. So he wanted to gain vengeance of this. So that is why he said that if you do not bring me back the allegiance of Imam Hussein, then I want the head of Imam Hussein so that I can show that I have won, supposedly. But we know today that this hasn't happened because Yazid's name is cursed and he's from an accursed tree, whereas the name of Mullah Imam Hussein, regardless that he gave his life for Islam, his name is still utmost high.
Definitely, yeah. For the sister at home, I hope that answers your question. Thank you very much. I think that was wonderful the way you answered it. Without a doubt, when anyone that studies Islamic history, you find, like you mentioned, that there were many situations where Islam were threatened. There's many battles that took place to ensure that the true message continues in Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Fatima Zahra and others as well. And there was many sacrifices, but Imam Hussein's sacrifice was the ultimate sacrifice, where he took his children, his family, and that's what ensured. And Imam Hussein echoed in many of his speeches that my revolt is to reform and to restore the religion of Islam and to restore my grandfather's message. So it was the ultimate sacrifice, and without that it would not continue.
And Mullah Imam Hussein, right up until the end, he even said to the army of Yazid, there is still time now. You can still turn and come. Don't sell your soul to this world. He gave them opportunities, but that is what happened when greed of money, of this life, in this world takes over the mind and the heart of individuals. Because we have to understand, are we one of those individuals that are with the party of Yazid that love everything that is materialistically, or are we going to become like Hur alayhi salam, who at the last moment realized that what am I doing? Because when he had lost all hope is when he came to Mullah Imam Hussein and he said that I have wronged you. I was the one that interceded on your way to Kufa. And Mullah Imam Hussein, even at that moment, look at the words. He says, Hur, your mother named you rightly. You're not only free in this life, you're free the next. And we then have to create this reformation and learn something very great from Hur alayhi salam, that are we going to be like him, where our hearts can truly turn? And that is inshallah what we should strive for. There are so many great personalities within Karbala that we need to emulate from, and I pray that our Muslim Ummah can do this, because we are doing ourselves an injustice, and we have to ask ourselves that our Rasul, is he truly happy with us? Because we, in our dua, and then we read dua at the Tawassul, and we ask that, our loved ones of Allah, please stand by us when Allah sits in judgment over us. But when the time comes, will we be ready to show them our face? Because yes, we ask for their intercession, but are we truly worthy of it? And this is the reason why Karbala is not just about going and listening to the majlis and crying and then coming back home and going around your daily duties again. No, it is about a reformation. Yeah. It's a revolution of the soul which needs to happen. Inshallah.
Definitely, inshallah. Now we see that when Imam Hussein sacrificed his life, we know that it was much needed in that situation and in that period of time. But what reform did the tragedy of Karbala bring about? I mean, many people may ask that, Imam Hussein was killed, his family was killed, they were all killed. But what reform did it actually bring? Because we know that although Imam Hussein died in the plains of Karbala, his message truly continued, and he succeeded while they lost. So what reform did it bring?
Well, first and foremost, we need to understand that Karbala truly survived on the backs of the women, especially Hazrat Zainab. And the reformation that we've seen that happened that time was that even though Yazid claimed to have won, even regardless of imprisoning the women, imprisoning Imam Sajjad, people's hearts started to turn from that time into this day, because they realized that what Imam Hussein's plight was has made us feel redemptful. They felt this purging that they needed to do, because obviously there were those who claimed to be on the side of Mullah Imam Hussein, but they didn't. So a reformation happened within Islam right from that time, that what it did, it lifted the hearts of the peoples. It provided an ignition within, which was very important because they needed that. And even to now, every year we see that when Karbala happens, we see an igniting again of the people. And yes, it doesn't happen to the greatest degree that maybe we want it, because we are still facing oppression, but we do see a unity. We do see some reformation amongst the people coming together. And not only that, what I want to discuss upon is that the reformation happened because Hazrat Zainab discussed over and over again of what she witnessed within Karbala. And when she was asked that what did you see, she said that in Karbala I saw nothing but beauty. And look at her patience, that you see your brothers dying, you see your children dying, and you're seeing beauty in that, because she is realizing that this is ultimate tawheed, this is what they are doing. They are going to fight in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to survive the religion that Allah has said within the Quran, that this is the day that I have perfected your faith. That we see our faith of Islam is a perfect one, and if it hadn't been, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would have sent another revelation, but he didn't. And Mullah Imam Hussein kept that, and I believe that the people realized this, that after the tragedies happened, they realized that Mullah Imam Hussein's plight and his plight of the people that went along with him and sacrificed, I believe that it ignited something within their souls. They actually realized something. And I feel that that was part of the reformation that happened. And not only that, Yazid, may the curse of Allah be upon him, but we see in certain recordings in history that he started to pass the blame, because he realized that the people were really turning against him. But again, we have to question this, that was his apology a truthful one? I mean, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is all-knowing, and Allahu Alam knows better than you and I. But we see that even he had to then succumb to the people's wishes. And then, obviously, he had to release the prisoners that were brought back. He had to release Imam Zain al-Abidin, which he may have never have done. And this didn't happen after 40 days. Imam Zain al-Abidin, Hazrat Zainab, they were inside imprisonment for a very long time. Some records say many years, some records say 1 year, some records say 4 years. There were many records that it took a long time before their release happened. But that was because the people's hearts started to melt, and they started to turn against Yazid. And today we even see this, that even though there is Yazidiyat amongst us, but people start reforming, and we have a march that's coming up. Not so long ago we saw a protest within this country against the embassy because of what's happening out in Bahrain. We see protests happening against the oppression that's taking place in certain other places amongst the globe, Palestine, Syria, Egypt, Libya. People are an upsurge, and even though they may not share in the same ideology that we do, they are mirroring an image of what the plight of Hazrat Zainab and Imam Zain al-Abidin was. And a revolution like this is needed.
Definitely true. It's much needed in today's society. I just want to touch upon one point you mentioned regarding that people began to know what the truth was. We know that in Kufa that they were celebrating. They thought that they didn't know the truth. They didn't distinguish between falsehood and truth, and they were actually celebrating until Sayyidina Zainab alayhi salam came and gave that speech. But we even have a hadith, in order to know truth, you need to know the people of truth, and in order to know falsehood, need to know the people of falsehood. And I think Imam Hussein alayhi salam distinguished that for the people and safeguarded his religion. We have about two or 3 minutes left, but just before we end off, you mentioned something about Sayyid Zainab's speech, and I really want to touch upon this because I really think it's important that all those who wish to have Sayyid Zainab alayhi salam's speech, then we can send it to you both in Arabic and English if you do want that. So inshallah, just before we end off, what impact did Sayyid Zainab alayhi salam's speech have to ensure Islam continued?
Well, it definitely shook the confines within the Yazidi Darbar. Her speech was so immense that people started to question that has someone brought back Mawla Ali, because her words were, they reverberated, that they were so strong. And what she was saying to Yazid, that do you think that by imprisoning the family of the Ahlulbayt that you have won? And when Imam Zain al-Abidin even spoke, the azan started going off, and Imam Zain al-Abidin said that it's my grandfather's name that they are reciting from the pulpits, not yours, and you think you won.
Exactly.
Our name is still alive. What Yazid tried to do was obliterate the name of the Ahlul Bayt, but what Hazrat Zainab did was that she kept that alive, and we should be so grateful. We are in debt to her so much that she kept that alive. Our salams to you, Hazrat Zainab. She mentioned something very, very strong within her speech which really angered Yazid, and she said that if it wasn't for my grandfather Rasulullah, you people would still be lost today, because they were living in Jahiliyyah. And we know this because the Umayyad family, before Abu Sufyan came to the faith of Islam, supposedly, he was a staunch enemy of Rasulullah. So,
inshallah. I mean, I know I just really want you to continue and say all the points, but unfortunately we have run out of time. Thank you so much for coming on today. Inshallah, if we can do part 2, then we would do part 2 and continue on. And perhaps focus on the speech of Sayyid Zainab alayhi salam, because I think that's
just on an end note, if someone does wish to read it, I recommend a very good book called The Tragic Events of Karbala. It's been edited by Ali Ibrahimi, so please, if you can get a hold of this, then definitely.
Inshallah. But thank you very much for joining us today. For the audience at home, unfortunately we have reached the end of today's show. For all those watching today's show, if you have any comments or questions, then please do email you regarding today's show or any of our future shows. As we said, that Imam Hussein alayhi salam's sacrifice ensured that Islam continues. He safeguarded the religion and taught humanity a lesson. That's all for today, and inshallah join me tomorrow with Sister Mahbash Mirza, where we'll be speaking about the sacrifice of Karbala in different schools of thought and what different schools of thought have said. That's all for now, and join me tomorrow, same place and same time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.